The Phillies roster is relatively set for opening day, but there are still some surprises that I have on my first roster projection of the spring. I'll tell you that on today's episode.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We come to you as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And now the number one sports podcast network, Locked On Phillies, your number one place for Monday through Friday Philadelphia Phillies content. You might know me from some of my other work in the sports talk space. I've been on air over at 97.5 The Fanatic doing sports talk radio here in Philly for over 6 years. Been a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for the past 4 seasons. And this is year 5 for me hosting Locked On Phillies. And today's episode is brought to you by MLB The Show 26. You can visit MLBThe.show/locked-on and use code locked-on to unlock a pack for use in Diamond Dynasty. And you can pre-order the game now, available March 17th on PlayStation 5, Xbox, and Nintendo Switch. It is rated E for everyone. Let's take a look at the opening day roster projection version 1.0 for Locked On Phillies today. Normally, I do this a little bit earlier on in the offseason, and sometimes I'm relatively close. I was pretty good last year to start things off, but there's always some surprises, and there are some tricky spots on this year's roster when you look at the depth. Something to think about. Last year, those final couple of bullpen spots, they probably won't matter. And then Joe Ross stinks, and Jordan Romano stinks, and the next thing you know, you got to call up a bunch of bullpen arms to make stuff happen. It's important to find depth roles that can help a team reach their potential ceiling. So we're going to start with the position players, a couple of depth questions there, specifically the final outfielder that will make the roster. Who is that going to be? Then we're going to move on to the rotation. Is it as locked in as everybody believes it to be at this point? And we'll round out with a look at the bullpen. There are 2 spots that are open. And there's a lot of competing schools of thoughts on who gets the final 2 spots in the 2026 Phillies bullpen on opening day. Now, remember, all of this can change between now and the end of spring training. I'll have roster projections updated every Monday, and all of this can change over the course of a season. But let's start with the position players, because there's a lot of stuff that seems pretty set, but there are some interesting implications that you might not have thought about, even with positions that seem easy to predict. Let's start with the catchers. They're going to carry 2. JT Realmuto is going to be the starter. That's not surprising. But the backup is a little bit tricky. Rafael Marchan and Garrett Stubbs are both out of minor league options, which means whichever one of them does not make the team will have to clear waivers to make it to the Phillies minor leagues. Garrett Stubbs is the older player by, I believe, 6 years. So it's much more likely that a team would pick up Rafael Marchan, the younger player, on waivers. That's why I have Marchan being the backup to JT Realmuto on this year's Phillies team. And Garrett Stubbs, he could get claimed, and that could lead to the end of his time here in Philadelphia. I know it feels like a while since he made those comments in 2023 in the middle of the NLCS about celebrating in the pool, and everyone lost their mind at him. From that moment, folks were ready to be done with Garrett Stubbs. It may officially be the end of his time at the end of this spring training if he gets picked up on waivers, because I don't think he'll make the team over Marchan. And I think those guys are pretty much interchangeable, maybe more upside offensively with Marchan, though we didn't see it last year. He really had a rough season in 2025. But those are the 2 catchers as far as I see it. Infielders, I've got 5 making the opening day roster. Kind of, 5.5. So obviously Bryce Harper's your first baseman. Bryson Stott will be playing second, along with Edmundo Sosa as a platoon, in my opinion. But Sosa will definitively be on the team, and he will be essentially, even if not every day, the platoon partner for Bryson Stott. So Sosa's also on the team. Turner is going to be playing shortstop. I mean, come on, you didn't need me to tell you Trey Turner's going to make the team, and you didn't need me to tell you Alec Bohm will be their third baseman. Now, what's interesting about this is those are the 5 infielders I have, and there's not really another option. Aiden Miller's probably the next guy up, and that dude's not ready to make the team out of spring training. He could come up this year. And looking at the fact that you only have 5 infielders, where some teams around baseball will carry 6 for significantly more depth. Like, you have 1 injury in the infield, and what, Edmundo Sosa's playing there. You lose the platoon for Bryson Stott, and then you have to do something else in the infield. Now, the good news is the Phillies do have a guy that can play both the infield and the outfield, or at least try to. So let's talk about the outfielders that I have making the squad for the Philadelphia Phillies. By the way, if you need me to say designated hitter, it's that guy who almost won MVP last year. Kyle Schwarber's the DH of this team every day, and that's not changing. That's a very good thing that the Phillies were able to re-sign him. Technically, he's an outfielder, but we know he's DH. He might play a game or 2 in the outfield just because. And then when we go to the outfield, there are 3 guys that I believe are absolute locks to make the team. Adolis Garcia, Justin Crawford, Brandon Marsh. Those are, for all intents and purposes, your starters in right field, center field, and left field, respectively. But we've talked about the Marsh platoon. I still believe that Otto Kemp is the best platoon partner for Brandon Marsh in left field. And the other thing that Kemp brings that not a lot of other guys major league ready in this organization bring is you can play him in the infield at third. You can play him in the outfield in the corners. Now, is he a good defender in either of those spots? He's not right now. He really needs to work on his defense. He's, I don't want to say a liability in the outfield, but he feels like one at third base from what we watched last year. The upside is the offensive profile. They believe in it heavily. We'll see. I'm interested to see what he can bring after a year last year that saw him play through a broken kneecap. Maybe there's way more upside there than meets the eye, but time will tell on Otto Kemp. The bottom line is he's a guy that can play both the infield and the outfield. So that's why I think he's almost a lock to make the team as well, unless something goes terribly wrong with his performance in spring training. But then there's one more spot, position player-wise, and I've got to think about the guy that has the most upside. Now, some people were bringing up Pedro Leon in the comments of the last episode where I was talking about the platoon partners and everything, thinking about him as a platoon partner for Brandon Marsh. Leon has 20 career at-bats, 21 career plate appearances at the major league level. I think the Phillies want somebody more experienced in that final outfield spot. I've also told you, just in our most recent episode, in the stock up, stock down, Johan Rojas does not seem like he's having himself a quality spring training. He looks overmatched by pitching again. The defense, he's incredibly athletic, but the decision-making and the jumps he gets and reading the balls, like sometimes it's exceptional. Sometimes it looks like he's very confused out there. I just think back to the Edmundo Sosa in left field, Johan Rojas in center field against the Braves last year, and a ball just falling at basically Rojas' feet after not calling off a first-time left fielder as the starting center fielder of a major league team. Like, that kind of tells you, hey, this guy has not looked as comfortable as he needs to play the outfield for the Phillies at the major league level. And I can't trust the offense. Like, he's had enough time to show us he can develop offensively, and he hasn't done it. Which is why, for me, the final position player spot on the Phillies 2026 opening day roster is going to Bryan De La Cruz. Bryan De La Cruz has 1 point of upside that you don't get from any of the other guys that are close to major league ready. He brings right-handed pop, at least in theory. He showed off a great season of power potential in his time with the Miami Marlins. He has major league experience, right? He's not some guy that just like, oh, he hit 20 home runs at AAA. Maybe he can hit at this level. Now, I don't think he's going to give that to the Phillies, which is why he was also one of the stock down guys when we did the current trends of spring training. But you tell me who has more upside for what this team needs right now. Johan Rojas, who might hit 3 home runs if he plays 162 games, or Bryan De La Cruz, who is an okay defender, but we've seen him have 20 home run power at the major league level. I think it's De La Cruz, and I don't think it's close. And I think his experience is what puts him over Leon, even if Leon is having a better spring training. So that's why he, to me, gets the final spot on the roster right now. It's more of an experimental thing for the Phillies, and we will see how that plays out if that's indeed how they go. But give them a couple pinch hit at bats early on in the year. Maybe a spot start here or there when somebody needs a day off. See if you find something. And if you cut bait, well, you signed into a minor league contract anyway. You're not financially invested in Bryan De La Cruz in any way. So that's the opening day roster position players. I'll run through it one more time for you. Realmuto and Marchan catching, Harper, Stott, Turner, Bowman, Sosa, the infielders. Kemp, kind of the utility guy in both the infield and the outfield. You can list Sosa as utility as well. Garcia, Crawford, and Marsh, your true starters. Bryan De La Cruz, your depth option in the outfield. And Kyle Schwarber, your DH. Coming up, we're going to talk about the starting rotation. You might say, Connor, I could skip this. I know who the 5 guys in the starting rotation are going to be for the Philadelphia Phillies. Well, how locked in is it really? Is it as set in stone as everyone thinks it is? What could change? We'll discuss that coming up next as we continue today's episode talking about our first version of the roster projection for 2026 opening day here on Locked On Phillies. Let's talk about FanDuel first, though, because college basketball is nonstop. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night from early tip-offs to late-night West Coast shootouts. There's always action on the board. And now FanDuel's giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. You can build any college hoops parlay you want, rivalry games, ranked matchups, whatever fits into what you're looking to do. You can mix spreads, totals, and player props to match how you see everything playing out. And then you can apply the profit boost and instantly bump up the potential payout. It's a great way to make even more money on a bet that you know is going to hit. Just look at the odds around your favorite team and see what you like the best. It's super easy. You can go safe, you can go bold, or you can ride with the team you've been following all season. It's your parlay, your style, now with more upside behind it. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game, especially with college basketball season absolutely rolling right now. Let's also tell you about our friends over at Indeed, because hiring is important. And I know how work goes. It gets stressful. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on, you need the right hire. That's a job for Sponsored Jobs by Indeed. They help you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. Here's a stat that says it all. In the time I've been talking to you during this ad, there have been companies like yours that have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. The goal is always less stress, less time, more results, right? And that's why Indeed Sponsored Jobs is important. And even better, listeners of this show are going to get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on Locked On Phillies. Again, that's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions do apply. If you need to hire, that's a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Let's talk about our Everydayer Club, too. You got to check it out. If you haven't seen it yet, it's a great opportunity for you to take your listenership, your viewership of Locked On Phillies to the next level. And don't forget to check it out before the season starts, because you're going to get a chance for ad-free episodes. You're going to get access to a group chat with me and other listeners of the show. Tap the link in the show notes, or you can go to lockedonphillies.supercast.com. There's a lot of great features of it, and it helps you get your information quicker, cleaner, and also some extra info and access to that Locked On Phillies Discord chat. So go ahead and check out our Everydayer Club. I think it's a great way to get reared up and ready to go for the upcoming Major League Baseball season. Now, is the starting rotation for the Philadelphia Phillies set in stone? It would certainly seem to be. And here's why I say that. Because my opening day roster projection for the starting pitchers is exactly the same as every other person out there who's going to do this exercise. Cristopher Sanchez, Jesus Luzardo, Aaron Nola, Taijuan Walker, Andrew Painter. Those are the 5 guys. That's it. There is nobody else that could possibly break into that rotation on merit that the Phillies currently have in their organization. There's just no other way, right? Nobody is going to overtake any of those guys. You have 4 guys with significant major league experience. And then you have one guy that, I mean, they've told you already. Painter's going to be on the opening day roster. That's just plain and simple how it's going to go. What can change, though? That's the question, because nothing's ever set in stone. So let's look at possible scenarios where there's a different name there. There have been a lot of people. Maybe it's thinking, maybe it's wishing, maybe it's hoping that the Phillies would go out and add another veteran arm that would set this rotation up a little bit better with Wheeler missing some time to start the season. By the way, I'll just say it now, Wheeler is going to start the season on the injured list. He will come back when he's available, so he won't be taking up a 26-man roster spot. So he's going to be on the team. He's just not on the team to start the season. And because they can put him on the IL, he won't take a spot up. So that's why you're going to be at 27 guys listed in this roster projection. Wheeler doesn't count. But as far as the guys that could fall out of the Phillies rotation, if they were to go out and sign a veteran option, the most likely candidate would be Taijuan Walker. The reason why is exactly what happened to him last year. He was in the rotation, out of the rotation, back in the rotation, out of the rotation. He does not get enough credit. And we've talked about this before, but I'll say it again just because we brought it up. He doesn't get nearly enough credit for the job he did for the Phillies last year. Coming off a 7+ ERA season, moved to the bullpen, then back to the rotation, the bullpen, or rotation, snip, snap, snip, snap. And he just kept giving the Phillies quality innings. Do you know how hard that is? To be on a team where everybody wanted the team to eat the contract in spring training. Nobody believes in you. You got to have like 40 different roles, and you don't know what it is week to week. And you just go out there and throw really consistently good baseball at the major league level. Like, hat tip, Taijuan Walker, credit to you. You had a really solid year last year. And with that experience, the Phillies should feel comfortable if they were to go sign another veteran arm. And there are still a couple of guys out there available. They could do that and then move Taijuan Walker to the bullpen. When we get to the bullpen coming up, you're going to see there are 2 spots that are up for grabs as far as the swingman, low leverage reliever type of stuff in the Philadelphia Phillies bullpen. And with that, you're going to get the opportunity to move Taijuan Walker if you sign somebody else. The other thing that could happen, because Luzardo is going to be part of the rotation, Nola is going to be part of the rotation, Sanchez is going to be part of the rotation. Painter is a guy that the Phillies have basically told you is making the team, that he's ready to go, that everything has looked really good. They hope he has a bounce-back year after a full offseason and his second full season since returning from Tommy John surgery. These are all hopes, though. There is a world where Andrew Painter still doesn't look like Andrew Painter. And the Phillies have got to be careful with how they bring him along, right? I don't think there'll be a major innings restriction, but is there a chance that the Phillies see something in spring training where they're like, maybe he needs a month. Maybe he's not ready yet. Maybe we keep him at AAA, and that way we can manage his innings count a little bit more and bring him up later in the season. Now, if you do that, you would have to fill that roster spot with somebody else. This would kind of be in tandem with what we were just talking about with signing another veteran pitcher. And I don't see a move coming for the Phillies at this point in spring training. But stranger things have happened, right? We have seen it before where they've gone out and gotten guys late into spring training. Who knows? I don't think it's likely, but I won't tell you it's not possible. If that does happen and they haven't seen enough from Andrew Painter, we're not talking about like, oh, he's giving up home runs or he's walking guys or stuff like that. Like, I think even that in spring training, they'll let him work through it. I'm talking about they don't trust the integrity of the arm to throw as many innings as they need him to at the major league level. that would be another instance where the opening day rotation looks different than what I'm projecting. But these are low likelihood scenarios. The by far most likely, like 90+% chance, maybe even more than that, for the opening day rotation is Sanchez, Luzardo, Nola, Walker, Painter. Now, is that the order of guys? We're going to have another episode on that later on in the week of how the rotation should be built out as far as who's your ace, who's your two, like all of that stuff. And there are some question marks there. That'll be a really intriguing conversation to get into that I'm excited to have. But I think it's undeniable that those are the 5 guys that will be in the starting rotation for the Phils on opening day. Just wanted to talk a little bit about why that could change, because if you know anything about baseball, nothing is ever set in stone. Something that actually does feel pretty set, though, compared to previous years, is the Phillies bullpen. They've got defined roles. They've got a lot of high leverage arms. And yet, when you need 8 guys, there are still always going to be some question marks. Who get the final 2 spots in my first roster projection for the Phillies opening day roster bullpen? We'll tell you about that coming up as we continue today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Let me tell you about our friends over at PlayStation, because come on, guys, you've played MLB The Show before. If you're a baseball fan, you had to have. And there's a new version coming out. I'm thrilled to be talking about MLB The Show 26. The greatest game in baseball is back, and its newest installment is better than ever. Baseball fans are going to have a hard time pulling themselves away from this game. There are some really great features in the game. Of course, you've always got, right, like Road to the Show, where you can create your own player. I love to do that and just build my way up through the minor leagues, force my way to the Phillies and become a legend here in Philadelphia. But also, if you disagree with what like Dave Dombrowski has been doing for the Philadelphia Phillies, you could build the team yourself. Franchise mode. Diamond Dynasty is a great opportunity for you to put some of your favorite players from around baseball on your team. They've got so much cool stuff. The gameplay is awesome. It feels more realistic than ever with every new copy. And MLB The Show 26 is not any different. It's the best version, and you got to get it to get all of your baseball control and excitement out as you wait for the season to start. If you're a gamer, a baseball fan, or just want to enjoy America's favorite pastime in a new, exciting way, you're absolutely going to love MLB The Show 26. Visit MLBThe.show/LockedOn and use code LockedOn to unlock a pack for use in Diamond Dynasty. And you can pre-order the game now. It's available March 17th on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series S and X, and Nintendo Switch. MLB The Show 26 is rated E for everyone. Final spots in the rotation. Bullpen. Where do they go? There are some question marks here, and I'm going a little bit against what some other folks have projected. There are major questions on whether or not Zach McCambley is going to make the team, how Zach Pop filters in, could Kyle Backhus make it, Max Lazar has major league experience, and the list goes on and on and on. I've seen all kinds of names for guys that could get the final 2 spots on the bullpen roster. But let's go with the guys we know. Johan Duran is your closer. Brad Keller is your right-handed setup guy. Jose Alvarado is your left-handed setup guy. Tanner Banks is your next best lefty reliever. Orion Kerkering is your 3rd best righty reliever. Right there, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys. Now there's a 6th spot that is locked in, even though you may not know a lot about him. Jonathan Bolin, who was part of that Matt Strahm trade with Kansas City, has major league experience, has been a really solid middle of the bullpen reliever at the major league level. He can continue to be that for the Phillies, I have no doubt. He's just another capable guy. He won't be a high leverage guy for this team unless he finds something new that he hasn't had previously in his career. But he's a guy that has to be in this bullpen, right? Too much major league experience, too solid of a resume to not be. He's not going to be on any banners around Citizens Bank Park, but those are the guys you need to balance out a bullpen. So 6 spots taken there. Bolin, the only one that you don't really know a lot about. course, Brad Keller's also new, but he was the big bullpen signing. So I'm sure folks have been zoned in on him. If you want a season preview on any of these guys, we already did it individually for each bullpen member. So you can go back through some of our old episodes for the breakdowns there, including Jonathan Bolden and Brad Keller, two of the newest names that'll be in the Phil's bullpen. That's 6 guys. And we are down to 2 spots left in the bullpen, in the roster in general. Who gets those spots? First and foremost, I think Zach McCambley makes the team. McCambley is the Phillies' Rule 5 draft pick from the Miami Marlins organization. When I did my season preview for McCambley, I was like, I don't know what this guy's going to be at the major league level. But let's look at circumstance. That's the number one thing I'm using here. The Phillies rarely use their Rule 5 draft pick. Remember, teams don't have to use it. They can just say, nah, we're good. We're not selecting anybody. Because using your Rule 5 draft pick means the guy has to be immediately placed on the 40-man roster. And if he does not remain on the 26-man roster throughout the entirety of the next season, he's offered back to his previous club. For some teams that utilize the Rule 5 draft pick more often than the Phillies, they might just say, hey, guy didn't cut it in camp. Whatever, we took a shot. We'll offer him back. We'll cut our losses now. I don't think the Phillies, who do not use the Rule 5 draft pick as often as other teams, did it just for fun this year. I think they like McCambley. I think they've seen enough from their scouting department when he was with the Marlins to say, okay, I think this kid has enough to be part of our bullpen. And I don't see them having wasted that selection, right? Let's just think about it this way. They make that pick for Zach McCambley. They allow Griff McGarry to be drafted in the Rule 5 draft by another team in division. McGarry had a nice year last year, right? Minor league pitcher of the year, I believe, for the Phillies organization, Griff McGarry. And you let him walk in division. You could have used that 40-man roster spot that you used on McCambley to keep Griff McGarry as part of the team, or organization, I should say. So with all of that invested circumstantially in Zach McCambley, I find it hard to believe that they're not going to add him to the team. The final spot then that leaves us with, some people like Zach Pop, some people like Max Lazar, some people like these other names that you've heard, Alan Rangel, who's a guy that you could use as a swing man a little bit. Now, Taijuan Walker, who's in your rotation, I think is going to be the swing man for this team. So you're just starting with him in the rotation, which normally you see guys start with a guy in the bullpen that could start. The Phillies are starting the season because of the Wheeler injury with a guy in the rotation that could also throw out of the pen. So they're just doing it kind of backwards, which is fine. There's no issue with that. It's just not the most conventional way. But circumstances made that happen. But because of that, I'm not looking at the bullpen in the final spot and saying, I need a guy that can start. I'm looking at the final spot and I'm like, who gives the Phillies something that they don't have right now? And that's why, for me, Kyle Backhus is making the opening day roster. Now, I might be the biggest Kyle Backhus guy in Philadelphia Phillies media, right? I haven't seen a lot of folks saying, hey, this dude is going to be a lock to make the roster. And the average roster projection is not containing, like, it doesn't have Kyle Backhus on it. But here's why I think he fits. Because one, he's a lefty, and that balances out the bullpen better than adding another right-handed arm. The Phillies could benefit from, I always like to have 4 righties, 4 lefties. You need a lefty in that final spot to make that even. And he has such a weird delivery that you're not going to see really anywhere else. And I like having weirdos in my bullpen. I do. That's why I wanted Rogers so bad in free agency, who's throwing submarine and nearly scraping the ground with his hand when he releases his pitch. Like, if you're going to have a guy that's a flyer, at least have a guy that throws weird. Right? I think every team should have like a sidearm or submarine guy or a guy with a funky delivery just to try and throw guys off to try it. If it doesn't work, hey, you took a shot with upside. It's very much like Bryan De La Cruz's power in the outfield. It's just like, hey, maybe it doesn't work out, but he brings something that the other options do not have. Kyle Backhus brings something that the other final bullpen options do not have. And that's why I'd have him on the opening day roster. If he doesn't work, he doesn't work. Bullpens are going to see change throughout a season. But he, I think, has the highest upside because of that weird delivery. And that's a guy that I want on this team. So there's my opening day roster projection. I'll run through all the names one more time. Version 1.0 is Realmuto, Marchan, Harper, Stott, Turner, Bohm, Sosa in the infield, Garcia, Crawford, Marsh, Kemp, Bryan De La Cruz in the outfield, Schwarber DHing. Your rotation is Chris Sanchez, Jesus Luzardo, Aaron Nola, Taijuan Walker, Andrew Painter. Zack Wheeler starts the season on the injured list. And your bullpen is Theron, Keller, Alvarado, Banks, Kerkering, Bolin, McCambley, and Bacchus. There you have it. We'll see how close I get. I have it saved down here in my notes. I will continue to update, but I always go back when the opening day roster is revealed and see how close I got in the first projection that we did. So let me know in the comments who you agree with, who you think it's crazy that I put on the roster, and what you think about the different implications that we talked about of what these moves mean that maybe you didn't think about before. That's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Thank you so much for joining us as always. If you're checking us out in podcast form, and we're available wherever you get your podcast, I would love if you could rate and review. And if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. It's free and easy to subscribe. It gets you notifications when new episodes are posted. It takes like 1 second, and it costs you nothing, helps you out a little bit, helps us out a lot. So I appreciate that. Once again, we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and now the #1 sports podcast network. And I'll talk to you tomorrow on our next episode of Locked On Phillies.